Hey everybody, Teching and Barry back again, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, one and all, we have finally reached this point in the One Piece story. I am now beginning the Gorosei series. That's right. We're going to be doing 5 videos, each representing each one of the 5 Elder Stars. I never thought we would reach this point, but hey, Chapter 1086 came out, and now we know the names of all of the 5 Elders, as well as their 5 job titles. So I finally have something to go off of here. As if I couldn't have already made 5 videos about the 5 Elder Stars before this. Okay, look, here's the thing. I could have done that because their designs are unique enough and they are based off of real-world leaders throughout history. You know, like, obviously, Samurai Gandhi is based off of Gandhi. Gorbachev is based off of Gorbachev. Actually, I just found this out the other day, but J. Garcia Saturn is based off of, I think, an Italian dictator from the 19th century. I think his first name was Giuseppe. I don't remember his last name, but anybody that's Italian or knows Italian history, let me know on that. So Oda's obviously basing them all off of like real world figures, so you could go off of that a little bit. But I'll be honest with you, the main discussion when it came to individual Gorosei up until now, before they were really relevant to the story, was Samurai Gandhi and the fact he had the Shodai Kitetsu. That was like the most interesting factoid that anybody could really, you know, drag up. For one thing, Samurai Gandhi dresses different from all the other ones, and he has a sword, which is most likely the Shodai, which is an interesting topic to discuss. I made a few videos about it, but there's only so much milk you can get out of that cow, you know what I mean? But now we have something to go off. We got names, we got transformations, or at least silhouettes of transformations. We got job titles, we got planets that they're based off of, so that opens up a whole gateway for various symbolism and meaning, and, you know, the Roman and Greek gods that those planets represent, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go into. So, yeah, I'm basically just gonna do this by viewer poll. I did this on the community tab of my channel. Over 17,000 of you voted, and the results for the first video are pretty overwhelming. Samurai Gandhi. So, you know, here we are today, of course, because he is the most interesting one. I mean, he just is. I mean, come on now, right? It's like Oda pretty much set it up as like, yeah, this is the guy that you need to pay attention to, all right? Well, anyway, yeah, today we're going to be discussing Samurai Gandhi. We're going to be going through his real name. We're also going to be discussing his title, like what his job description is, the planet that he represents, and we're going to go into a little bit of a symbolism involving that. I also put a tag here for like any kind of like supplemental information about each of the elders, you know, something else that maybe we could delve into. In the case with Samurai Gandhi, that basically includes the fact he has the Shodai Kitetsu. So we're going to go into that. I already made a video about that. So many people have, but I'll go into that today, all right? So, yeah, also, if you're a fan of economics or studying the economy or whatever, I'm going to have to try to talk about that stuff today. So wish me luck. But first, let's talk about Samurai Gandhi's real name. Okay, his name, ladies and gentlemen, is Ethan. His name's Ethan. All right. You know, I feel like I'm still going to switch back and forth between Samurai Gandhi. I feel that's more, like, obvious of, you know, like, you know who I'm talking about when I say Samurai Gandhi. You know what I mean? There's a reason he's Samurai Gandhi, but no, his name's Ethan. All right, his full title, the Honorable Saint Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro. That's his full name. Now, in the first translation I saw of his name, it was Ethan Baron, as in like a space, like separate words. In the official Viz translation, it's Ethan Baron, one word. Okay, so it's Ethan Baron, and then V. So he does not have the will of D, ladies and gentlemen, but he does have the will of V. Not really sure what that indicates, but his last name, or his first name, I guess, is Nusjuro. All right, so this is tough. This is tough. I had to crack the code on this. Nobody could really understand what the meaning behind these words meant. But you know, I'm going to go off on a limb here, and I'm going to say he represents the planet Mars. You know, Marcus Mars also has the name Mars, but I think there's 2 of the elders that represent the same planet. I think that makes the most sense. Yeah, we're going to go with that. Now, of course, his name represents Venus. It's Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro. And yeah, I just completely mixed that up in the review. I was doing the review, and I'm just like, I don't know which planet this guy is. And everybody is in the chat like, haha, good one, Teching, pretending that you didn't catch that. I'm like, ha, yeah, good one, right? Yeah, absolutely. No, okay. So he represents the planet Venus. Not the one I would have picked, by the way. The last planet I probably would have selected for Samurai Gandhi. I was almost all in on Mars representing that because, you know, he has the sword and stuff. So it's like, oh, the god of war. Maybe he uses the show Shodai. It's a demon sword. Ooh, I was thinking that, but no, it's actually Venus. So okay, and his title amongst the Gorosei, they all have titles that are not really all that powerful in terms of like anime badassery. He is the warrior god. That's cool. That part's cool. Or some translations have, I think the official is Godhead. Okay, so I don't know, kind of maybe going a little bit too berserk with that, but I'm gonna go with warrior god, which is nice, but it's of finance. The warrior god of finance. I will defeat you, Straw Hats. With money. He just starts throwing coins. You know, he goes up to Nami and he's just like, Nami, I am acquiring all of the money in the ship. And she's like, oh, the hell you are. And then it's just Nami fighting against Ethan Barron. That sounds so weird. It sounds so weird. All right, okay, but anyway, yeah, that's how he fights, right? No, okay. This actually makes a lot of sense, okay? Each of the Gorosei have titles that are indicative of, like, the ruling cabinet of a nation. Warrior god of finance, or agriculture, or environment, and stuff like that. They are essentially the oligarchy that rules the world, as in they are basically Eames' cabinet that rules over certain, ministries, or in the United States, we would call them departments, like Department of Energy, Department of Defense, stuff like that. And so it would make sense the Gorosei would have titles like this. I mean, it would be cool if, like, Samurai Gandhi's title was, like, War God Ares, or something like that. That's nice, but when it comes to, like, hey, we're running a government here, that's what the world government is. It's a government. It's right there in the title, all right? So it's like, we need somebody to manage the finances of this shit. You can't have a world government without a treasury. Somebody has to head it up. Who did you think was heading it up? Some random person we're never going to talk about? Okay, probably most people just assumed that was going to be the case. But no, it's Samurai Gandhi. It's Ethan Barron v. Nusjuro, and he's the one that heads up the finance. He is essentially, so in Japan, it's ministries in Japan. So there's a minister of finance in Japan. In the United States, where I'm from, it would be the Department of the Treasury, headed up by the Secretary of the Treasury. Let's just delve right into that right here. Anybody that actually is going to school for studying, like, macroeconomics or something like that, would probably have a much more provided input on how this works. I had to do just very quick research on this, and basically what I boiled it all down to was that the job description of Saint Ethan Barron V. Nusjuro, member of the High Gorosei, first of his name, and the warrior god of finance, would include some of the following: handling economic policies and tax policies, managing the national debt of the world government, or I guess it would be the managing the world debt of the world government, manufacturing currency, and dealing with law enforcement. Okay, so this is going to get kind of boring, but it's going to tie back to the world government and the One Piece world, so we got to go into it. All right, so first of all, economic policies. What does that mean exactly? Well, I did a little bit of research, like I said, like keyword being a little bit. If somebody wants to handle this better than me, go right ahead and comment down below. I'll pin the comment if it's like somebody that's like, all right, Teching, I know more about economics. Let me explain how this goes. And I should also mention, additionally to these broad ideas of economic policy, something more specific, although he probably doesn't deal with this directly, is budgeting. Many people might bring up the bounty system that exists in One Piece. Well, if you look at the bottom corner of every bounty poster, you will clearly see Marine stenciled there. I feel like the bounty system and how that's paid out is mainly decided by the Marines internally. Like, there's a finance department in the Marines that handles that, probably like a bounty department, honestly, that handles bounty payouts specifically. So probably Ethan Barron's, like, hand in this, like where he gets involved, is he will determine, or I guess him and the other Tenryubito will handle what the budget is for the Marines for a particular fiscal year, and then they will get that money, and then the Marines will then decide eternally how much of that budget they get from the world government will be set aside for the bounty department, I guess is the way that works. I don't think Ethan Barron is specifically sitting around signing every single bounty poster like, oh, Chopper is worth 1,000 berries now, I better make sure to sign off on that. I feel like that is a department that is handled squarely by the Marines. The only thing that Ethan Barron gets involved in is the overall budget for what the Marines will receive. All right, well, anyway, what I've basically figured out is there's 3 essential goals when it comes to economic policy and making the economy of a particular nation grow. Okay, these 3 things are Stable prices, as in keeping inflation as low as possible. Full employment. Now, this does not mean that 100% of every single adult is employed. I think most nations have it set at like 95 or something like that. So it's like 95% of your country is employed. That is considered full employment. And then economic growth. This involves your gross domestic product, or your GDP. All right, so overall, you want to keep prices stable, unemployment percentages low, having a high GDP, and you want high productivity along with that, all right? Is that right when it comes to good economic policy? I don't know. I'm asking you. I don't know. I didn't go to college for this. I went to college to talk to a brick, and it's working out well for me so far, but it doesn't really have a lot of other, like, real-world skills, okay? But, of course, that's economic policy in our world with individual countries. The world government is a world government. So you got to stop and think about what this would really mean when it comes to the entire world at large. Okay, yeah, there are separate individual kingdoms, and perhaps the world government, for the most part, would just have like a very hands-off approach to most of this. Like, you know, Dressrosa, yeah, you handle your own economy, you handle your own employment or unemployment rates or GDP or whatever like that. But things get really exciting when we move on to tax policies. I know, right? Okay. Because, you know, not just like the taxes work in our world, but in the One Piece world, there's a pretty hefty tax, and that is the Heavenly Tribute, which means Saint Ethan Baron V. Nusjoro, Samurai Gandhi, is probably the ultimate authority who handles the Heavenly Tribute. So he may very well be the one that decides what country is sending the world government in terms of that tribute, in terms of that tax, okay? I would imagine, Saint Ethan Baron goes and has a meeting with all the other heads of the families of the Tenryubito, and they sit down and they have like a discussion on like, oh, hey, this country over here, they mine a lot of gold, so we want this percentage of gold from that nation this year. And because of how corrupt the Tenryubito are, they can pretty much request absurd numbers. You know, it's not even close to being fair. You know, it's them sitting down at a table and being like, okay, how much gold do you want from the mines that they produce? 98% of all of their gold. That's a pretty high number. 99%. 97%, and that's how low I'll go. Oh, wait, fine. You get 97% of all their gold. All right, we'll send it over. They have to send it to you, or if they don't, then they get kicked out of the world government, and the Marines don't help them anymore, so they pretty much have all these kingdoms at gunpoint, is essentially how the world government operates, right? But, you know, Ethan Baron is essentially the dude that heads all that up. He decides how Heavenly Tribute works, and who sends what, and how it's transported to Marijois, and how it's distributed maybe amongst the Tenryubito, or where they redistribute all of that stuff in terms of the tribute. Like, okay, we're bringing all this ore in from a certain nation, we're gonna move it over here for weapon production or stuff like that. And of course, this is going to, eclipse other departments as well. So the other Gorosei, that's why they're all working in the room of authority to kind of work together to be like, okay, we're gonna, take some of the money from the Heavenly Tribute, we're gonna send it over to the science department, and that's St. J. Garcia's area, and so then he'll take it and take it over to Egghead, so funding, like money from the Heavenly Tribute will go to fund Vegapunk's research, kind of stuff like that, you know what I mean? So that's the tax policies. Managing debt is an interesting one, all right? And I had to do a lot more research on understanding national debt, because like national debt or world debt on that level is different from like personal debt that people would incur from like buying a house or buying a car or something like that. This is like a much larger macroeconomical scale here. Okay, so in our world, typically, how a nation would gain debts is by borrowing money from other nations. Or, guess what? I didn't even know this existed, a World Bank. Yeah, there's a World Bank that exists in our world. I guess it's kind of like the Iron Bank of Bravos, if you've ever seen Game of Thrones, where it's like countries will just go to the World Bank and like, hey, I need money. And then it's like, okay, you're in debt to the World Bank. And I'm like, I didn't even know this existed. Well, it exists in our world, and it also exists in the One Piece world. So my question to you, economics students, is how would the existence of a centralized world government affect debt to that world government, to that organization? Because the world government, they own everything. So they can't borrow from anybody because, they're the world government. So the world government might actually have zero debt in the most messed up way, because they would just bleed all the kingdoms dry. So really it would be so much not about debt, but more about just taxing the ever-loving crap out of all the other kingdoms in the world that are under the banner of the world government. At least that's the way I'm envisioning this, you know? I mean, and maybe in theory, you know, it's like one of the kingdoms with, like, the world government comes to a kingdom. And they're like, we need money for a project. And the kingdom is like, okay, we'll give you money because we're part of the world government. But then the world government is in that kingdom's, the world government would be in that kingdom's debt. But the world government could just be like, no, because you're under our banner. This is just taxes. Bye. Zero debt, world government. And then just walk away because they can kind of do whatever. So, yeah, I'm not sure how that would work. And I stopped researching it because my head was starting to hurt. Moving on to a simple one, manufacturing and maintaining currency, minting coinage and paper money and stuff like that. This is actually really cool. And I didn't even realize this. I would have mentioned it in the review, but, yeah. Saint Ethan Baron V. Joro, he handles the production of berries. You know, he would be the head of the treasury and the mints of the One Piece world. They have to exist. There's a centralized currency in the One Piece world, the belly. It exists. Therefore, there has to be mints that produce the money and the coins and send it out. And Oda even went ahead and drew what the paper money and the coins of the One Piece world look like. So Ethan Baron manages all that. So, you know, I mean, the whole connection between Nami and Samurai Gandhi here, it's kind of working out. You know, if the Straw Hats ever do run across the Gorosei at one point, I can imagine a scene where Nami just, maybe she doesn't actually act upon it, but Nami has like a vision in her head where she's just like, hey, you know how she kind of bribed Igaram when rescuing Vivi out of Whiskey Peak, and he's like, hey, we'll help Vivi, but we want like 1 billion berries from the treasure vault at Alabasta. I'm helping a princess out here. Nami might do something similar with Saint Ethan Baron V. Joro. Might be like, wait a second, hey, if I convince the rest of my crew to not beat the crap out of you 5 elders, you're the one in charge. You could literally mint all the money you need. So, you know, Nami might just like go crazy with it, right? So that's a simple one. Just manufacturing currency. He's the head of all that, and he chooses like how much currency is. God, how would inflation even work when you have a world government? Because it's all centralized. It's all one thing. That reminds me of that episode of Rick and Morty when Rick topples the intergalactic government by just changing a 1 to a 0 because there's one uniform currency. And so he just hacks into the computer and changes the dollar value to just, 0 to 1. And then everybody's just like, oh, God! And it ruins everything immediately. Maybe that's how you take down the world government. Maybe that's how you do it. The revolutionaries don't need to think too much with this whole, we have to, liberate these islands and blah, blah, blah. No, it just ruin the economy and immediately the world government would just collapse. There you go. Anyway, moving on now to the last job that he would most likely have is law enforcement. When you do have a currency that is, minted and everything like that, obviously there's going to be counterfeit and stuff like that. So you have to maintain the integrity of that currency by, maintaining the law. I imagine Marines would handle this, or the Cypher Pole would handle this, but that department would probably coincide with the, warrior god of finance, who is Saint Ethan Baron V. Joro. Still sounds really weird, but okay. Sorry I had to go into all that. I'm not sure if any of that was even like accurate, but I'm sure somebody probably out there will explain it if it wasn't. Yeah. So that's his job description. Now, will any of that become relevant in the story in any significant way? Probably not, unless there's a scene where, Ethan Baron sits down with Nami and is just like, all right, we need to discuss the terms of your loan. So, like, unless that happens, which, highly doubtful. All right. So moving on to the planet that Samurai Gandhi represents, and that is, of course, the planet of Venus. Surprising pick, but all right, let's roll with this. Okay, so number 1. In Japanese, the way that you would write out the planet Venus is with the kanji for kin, which is gold, and the kanji for planet, which was sei. Now remember, go-ro-sei. Originally, it was thought to be 5 elder stars. Sei represents any light-reflecting heavenly body that is neither the moon or the sun. So it's a very broad term. Obviously, the origin of the kanji happened hundreds and hundreds of years before we understood, like, that's a star, that's a planet, that's what makes them different, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's how the kanji works. Okay, so it's gold, say, or gold planet, gold star, which understandably, because Venus is covered with the gas, the CO2 gas effect, and so it looks gold if you just look at it, and also is very bright in the night sky. So it kind of makes sense there. Gold, warrior god of finance, and there you go there. Now, in terms of gods that are connected to Venus, of course, the first one you're going to go to is the Greek god of love and sex and passion, and that is, of course, Aphrodite. The Roman equivalent here is Venus, of course. And this is why it's an interesting choice, although all 5 of the, elders are dudes. So, in any of them, if there was, like, one woman in the group, you'd be like, she represents the planet of Venus, obviously, right? So, yeah, but on top of, being the goddess of love, beauty, sexual desire, fertility, passion, which, very romantic passion, which I don't know if, Samurai Gandhi represents any of that kind of stuff, but also Aphrodite did represent things like military success, as well as like civic peace, the idea of like, oh, okay, military success, and then the country is at peace, and then that kind of stuff. So okay, you could kind of go with it with that, but I'm not really sure that Oda's gonna go completely one-to-one here, like, oh, okay, so therefore, Venus is the goddess of love and fertility and sexual desire, therefore I have to take some of those elements into Saint Ethan Baron Venus Joro in some way. I don't know if Oda's going to go that crazy with it. It might just be a representation of the planet itself, so there's that. But I like the idea with the gold, the kanji being gold kind of fits the idea of finance, so I guess we can roll with that exactly. So in terms of the transformation that Ethan goes into, we have the most humanoid out of all of the silhouettes. It has humanoid appearance, kind of like really amorphous, lanky sort of body, long neck, and also the ribbon going around him, okay? And that ribbon is something that's very indicative of mythical zone transformations, or rather not even mythical zone, but awakened zone transformations. Rob Lucci and Kaku both had their fur from their animal forms becoming that ribbon, and then Luffy, of course, when he went into his Gear 4, has the steam ribbon, and he maintains that in Gear 5. Of course, Luffy is a mythical zone, sun god model, the Hito no Ni model sun god Nika, of course. So Luffy's kind of an interesting example here. Kaido even had it in his dragon form with the flame clouds and everything. Yamato had it in the wolf form. So it's something that's very indicative of zones. So it would make sense. Although, maybe Oda's trying to throw out a red herring here. Maybe it's just like, oh, we want you to think that they're all zone transformations, but there's something else. Now, whether or not they're zone transformations, I mean, this could work either way. You could either say mythical zone of this, or you could say the actual deity of this. So I decided to go with an Ashura, all right, for a number of reasons. Because, well, obviously we have Zoro, right? And then Zoro uses a sword, and he has a technique called Ashura. Ashura are Indian deities, beings. Sometimes they're referred to as titans in Indian lore, okay? And they have, like, they have aspects of good and bad. They're not just, like, full evil demons, just kind of like Zoro. Zoro is, like, this very demonic kind of visage about him, but he's also a good person as well, kind of something like that. They are sometimes referred to as anti-gods, because the opposite of an Ashura would be a Deva, so, okay. And we have Zoro going into this form when he uses his nine sword style, his Kyutoryu, all right? So I thought it would be actually interesting if we take that to the next level and we have Saint Ethan Baron Venus Joro transform into an actual Ashura, an actual Titan from Indian lore. Also, Samurai Gandhi. Gandhi is, of course, Indian, so that's kind of where this is all linking up. Also, he wields the Shodai Kitetsu, which, therefore, fighting Zoro. I don't know if the 5 elders are going to fight the Straw Hats. Don't know if that's the direction Oda's going with it, but if he did do that, Shodai Kitetsu, Zoro's got the Sandai Kitetsu. The Nidai, I guess, is still just chilling out at Wano, so maybe if, Momo or Yamato come back into the story, maybe they can bring the Nidai with them, if that's relevant at all to have all 3 in one place. I don't know if Oda has a storyline for the Kitetsus that are going to end with all of them together and, like, a demon pops out or something. I don't know. But if we're going to say that all these swords are possessed by the demonic souls of their creators or something like that, or like a legitimate demon, okay? The Shodai would be the worst and would also be the strongest and would be the Saijo Owazumono of the group, and the fact that one of the members of the Gorosei has that sword makes perfect sense. And I've said all these things at one time or another just through all the videos I've discussed. Like I said, it's the one topic when you're discussing the Gorosei is one of them has the Shodai. That's like the big topic everyone discussed all the way up until this point when we learn more about them, right? So I'm not going to go too into it because I've made videos about that. So many other people have. But the fact also that he has the most humanoid out of all of the Gorosei, I think is very fitting, because the humanoid form, like the sword, was designed to be wielded by a human being. All right, now obviously in One Piece, we've seen animals, wield swords and stuff like that. We've seen pretty much every creature in One Piece wield a sword at one point or another in an anime at large. But overall, the idea is like wielding the sword with human hands and having a general humanoid shape, wielding the katana, okay? Even if you want to go with the next level with it and say the Shodai Kitetsu's actual, like, it's not a devil fruit. It's literally the demon that's inside of the Shodai is like the demon form that Ethan Baron Venus Joro transforms into. Maybe that was a sword that originally he did not even have. What if it was a sword that Eam possessed? What if Eam knew the original Kitetsu, the original person that forged the blade? Because remember, Kitetsu was the dude that originally forged the Shodai. Kotetsu was his descendant a couple centuries later that made the Nidai, and Hitetsu, even more generations down the line, created the Sandai, and Hitetsu is still alive. Actually, we learned that Hitetsu is actually Sukiyaki, so I guess, wait a second. Wait. Was Tenguyama Hitetsu a real person? Because he was Sukiyaki Kozuki. That's actually an interesting, because the whole naming scheme is, Kitetsu, Kotetsu, Hitetsu. But was Hitetsu a real name that existed at one point, or was that just an alias that Sukiyaki created for the sake of hiding? Because he still created the Sandai. Oh, maybe he just had a title. Maybe he just had a name. Maybe Sukiyaki Kozuki moonlighted as a famous, swordsmith, and he took the name Hitetsu because he thought it sounded cool. I don't know. That might be a video for another day. That's an interesting topic in and of itself, but whatever. So the idea is maybe, Kitetsu lived a long time ago. He might have lived during the time of the Void Century. Eam might have known him. He dies because his soul gets rent asunder, or his demonic, it transforms into a demon and then gets sealed into a or some shit like that. And then Eam has the possession of the Shodai, and then he passes it down to whoever the Gorosei is that can, actually manage the blade, actually can handle the curse. And so the Shodai very well could have been a sword that was passed down through the various different iterations of the Gorosei over the centuries. So like when Samurai Gandhi dies, Eam will take the sword and then give it to the next member that he thinks can handle it. Something of that nature, right? So yeah, like I said, though, that's the Shodai. I've went into that before. So I think that's everything I wanted to discuss today. The name, the planets, the job description of the god of finance, the Shodai Kitetsu, and the transformation that they take. I think it might be something indicative of a being, a deity from Indian lore, an Ashura, as it were, or something similar to that. So you have a parallel to Zoro there. So there it is. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will leave a poll up on the community post. I don't know if I'll do it like right after this one. I could probably just do it right after this one uploads, and then you can determine what the next video will be. I'll try to do one of these a week up until One Piece resumes, and so we'll be done with the 5 Gorosei just in time for Oda to probably completely subvert our expectations and reveal way more about them, so I can make another video. So there you go. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Later, everyone.